Alright, developer log for April 2025. I have two major things to talk about this devlog, both related to level 6. I'm almost done with level 6. Tomorrow I'm going to do the last arena, and then that is done and I will continue to level 7. So the two major things I've done for level 6 is this thing. So for level 6 I want to have a monorail track, which I now have. So basically a train that can follow a path, and then as the character you can then hop onto the train. This was a... So first of all, the train model is obviously placeholder. The second thing is that this was pretty much something I programmed in one day, and it works surprisingly well so I can basically move between the train carts pretty smoothly. One of the issues is more related to the character movement in general than to the train itself. I'm going to show it when it stops again. So it's smoothly pulls into the station. So the character movement doesn't really like this geometry where it's stops you when you're going from carriage to carriage. This isn't again an issue with the platform, a great issue with the character movement I need to figure out. But yeah, that's, and like, so I said there was one issue, and that is that I can walk through the wall. So this way I don't glitch through, so if I walk in the direction of the train, everything goes well. Okay, it didn't go right up there because again related to character movement. But I can walk through the train this way. So if I do this, I slowly glitch through the train. I don't know why this happens, but that's the one issue I have not yet fixed. Other than that, I mean, it's good enough to test for myself, so it's not that big of an issue right now. But when I release the game, this obviously needs to be fixed because I can't have players just constantly glitching through the train. Another thing I had to do to have the train working is change the way I do standing on platforms. So I used to have a whole different code for handling platforms that I already had for the elevator. So there are some elevators. I will jump on a moving platform that's right there. And yeah, there was the code was incredibly complicated. I couldn't reuse the platform code because it uses a specific way of how it did things, and I had basically had to make a completely new movement code for the train. And that means I had to also work out how to do it with the player movement, and I didn't want to do it, so I checked how Unreal does it, because Unreal, I can place a Unreal character on the train and it went just along with the train, so I just looked at how do they do it. And they basically do it by just registering the object you're standing on in the character movement and then just checking every tick how far that object has moved. I will explain that later. But yeah, here you have the old platform. I mean, I'm still using it. This is not a replacement for the train. It's just it works side by side with each other. But yeah, this platform as its platform movement code completely scrapped and replaced with a more universal solution, which I am now going to talk about with a very high budget preparation I did. So here in blue I have the platform, and then here in red I have the character. So the way it used to work was the platform used to push characters, so it would just move along like this. So the platform would move, it would then impact the character, and then it would move the character. The annoying issue that I had then is when the platform did not impact, so let's say it went back down this way, it wouldn't impact the character, so it wouldn't know to move the character. So I also had additional code that basically checked for characters standing on, and then it would pull them along with the platform. So if it didn't, so if it pushed, it wouldn't do an additional pull. But if it did not pull, correctly, it would then remember that okay, we have not pushed this character, pull the character along. So that's how the old code worked. It was pretty complicated. It was pretty terrible. I copy pasted the code from Unreal movement, character movement, which isn't as easy as you think. Like that was actually pretty difficult to figure out how the character movement for Unreal works, because I actually had to figure out how it did work in order to copy it correctly. I couldn't just blindly copy paste the code into my own character movement. If you're wondering why I have my own character movement, it's because my character movement mimics Source and I didn't find Unreal standard movement adequate. So the way it works now is that the platform no longer checks for collisions, so it simply glitches through, I mean not glitches, it basically just goes through the player character movements. It also has to tick before the player character movement for this to work. So it ticks before the player character movement, then during the character movement records any object you're standing on, and when it sees that that object has moved, it will move in the same direction, in the same delta as the platform has moved. So instead of pushing the character, it now simply phases through the character. So again, this is how it worked in the old way. So it would push the character immediately. Now it simply phases through the character, and then during the character tick, it moves the character. And that's now how this works. So also it goes this way, it goes the same way. So both the normal platforms, the elevators, and also the train movement now completely ignore what a character is doing. So I was able to strip out a lot of code, and now it will just use this universal solution that works for every platform, and I don't have to make any additional code for platforms. Now up to the bug, I don't know why I am glitching through the wall. So let's say the platform is moving to the right and I'm moving to the left. So what I expect to do is that it moves to the right, then the character also moves to the right during its tick, and after it has moved first, then it will try to move to the left, and then what I expect to do is I expect it to see the wall and like, oh, I can't continue. So even though I'm putting left movement, I would expect this to happen. So again, character sees that the platform has moved, moves the character, then it tries to move in the direction I want him to, and then it's like, oh no, I can't move through it. And then it should not phase through, but for some reason I am phasing through and falling off the platform. I have to figure out why this is happening. Now, it does not happen at like low speeds, and this test setup is pretty high speed, probably higher speed than I would ever use, but yeah, it's an issue that I need to solve, and that's really all. No, actually I'm going to say one more thing about it, which is interesting. Going back to the menu. It is completely modular, so that's also a pretty cool thing about the train. I actually did a devlog before, but it was so bad that I actually decided to re-record this. So this is why this is a bit later. So here you have, here in the right corner, you can see basically all of the train modules. So I can remove the train. So let's say I want to remove the flatbeds. I can remove the flatbeds. Actually, I need to delete that, otherwise it will crash. So yeah, now it's just a control car, passenger car, and then the control car inverted. So when I now launch the game, it will have those flatbeds automatically removed and the train shortened. So the trains are completely modular, and that is just awesome. So I don't have like, I can just do whatever I want with the train, make new modules. I don't have to make like a specific train cars, full trains. I can just make train cars. And these are all, these are not like meshes, these are full objects that I can have things in them. So I can have, for example, the buttons that control them. So I can do all kinds of special things. So let's say I might want to make like a mounted gun. I'm not planning on doing a mounted gun, but I could just make a mounted gun module, put that in, and it would just work just fine. But yeah, that's enough about the trains. Before that, I'm going to go to the next major point. I'm going to very quickly explain one thing I missed last devlog, which is I fixed the character collision for the player. So the player collision used to be behind the camera. So the camera is directly on the rotation axis of the yaw. That is to make aiming as smooth as possible, because if your camera is not on the camera axis, it feels really strange. This is why I had to move so in order to see my body looking downwards, I could either move the character backwards, or I could move the camera forwards. But move the camera forwards means that it would be no longer on the rotation axis, which means it would be awful for aiming. If you ever played Cyberpunk 2077, you might have noticed it, because Cyberpunk 2077 does that. But I came across an issue with moving the character backwards, which is that you could phase through walls. I can still do that, but it's not an issue right now. And if you duck down and move your body entirely into the wall, that like you became impervious to attacks from enemies. Also, you could sometimes get attacked from enemies through the wall, which wasn't ideal. That isn't really a big problem in a single player game, but you could do some weird glitches with that. So what I've done now is that if I go to, actually I can show it immediately like this. So here I'm faced through the wall. If I go to the third person camera, this is now, I'm not faced with the wall. This is the actual collision hull for the character. So this is basically what other enemies, or if it had multiplayer, players see. This is my player collision is now in the correct spot. So what I've done is I've basically just added another skeletal mesh. So this is a skeletal mesh that exactly copies the animation instance of the main mesh. So this is a different mesh than this mesh, and that has fixed it. So yeah, this was an issue for enemies, because enemies didn't have their collision hull moved, only for the player, because the player needs to be able to see their legs and stuff. So now back to the main thing, and that is that I've been working on new types of level assets. So these are images of level 6. I usually don't show level progress, but this is so integral to what I want to talk about that I have to show it. So instead of having levels, I'll show how I used to do it. But these are basically the new levels I'm working on with a more modular approach to level design. So yeah, these are just some small snippets of the level. You can see the train tracks right here, the monorail, whatever. So if I exit the game and not exit the game, exit to the editor, I can go. What's the fastest way to do this? Tileset mining. No, it's tileset industrial complex. So here in industrial complex, these are the new modular things for industrial complexes. So here's a random fill section. So these are fill sections. These are just to fill up empty space. So if I have an open space, I can like fill it up with this and it looks fine. I also have more obvious stuff like this is a floor section. I can then add a wall section right here. Copy paste. I already did this for the demon levels, but now I've also done it for the industrial levels. Because, yeah, I don't think the industrial levels look that great. And they also didn't, actually more importantly, they didn't really play that well because everything was very flat and now it's a lot easier to add like verticality to levels. So I can also have some pretty stuff. So let's say I want to decorate the walls with a strut, so it looks more industrial, more 3D detail. You can see that something like this. Let's give it a ceiling. This is just a very basic level design. And there you go. Like here, a little corner of a room, completely modular approach. So I can just add something like this if I want to. Struts, like I can do whatever. So you see, this is just a much more modular approach, and that's what you see here back in these levels. These are all individual elements that I've mixed and matched to create a big station, basically. The way I used to do it is if I go to tileset, industrial, or labs is also fine. Labs might even be better. So these are how I used to do things, just have pre-made rooms. Problem is these rooms were very flat. Also it means that collision was quite difficult because I had to use complex collision. And I basically had to limit the amount of vertices I used because of complex collision it tries to collide with every single individual wall instead of being able to combine all of the collision into a collision hull. So for example this thing right here, let's open it on my other screen. If I show collision, you see that it has a simplified collision. This collision is not yet done because it isn't correctly flush with the surface of the mesh. But this is a very optimized collision hull. Whereas if I go to this thing, the room, show collision. Yeah, so this is the complex. This is also so these are all individual collision elements that need to be checked, which is a lot less performance friendly than of course the collision hull. So now that I have, for example, I can now have more detailed, high poly count meshes that are using simplified collision. So here you see the simplified collision. Instead of having like this big room with complex collision, which is just a lot more. So I really have to limit the amount of vertices and level detail I can put in here because every single additional detail is additional performance loss. Whereas with the modular approach, I have a lot less performance loss with a lot more detail. So that's all I'm going to say about it, except for one thing, and that's like the level 1 and 2. So level 6, 7 and 8 are going to be the last level that make use of industrial areas. However, level 1 and 2, which are also in the demo, of course also make use of industrial areas, and I'm planning to use the new modular approach in these levels. So I'm gonna improve some of the arenas. So some of the arenas that I don't really like, so these flat arenas right here, these are probably gonna get replaced, especially the gym area. Like this whole area is probably gonna get reworked. I'm only going to do that once I have all of the other industrial levels done, because then I have just a ton of additional assets that I can then use to mix and match in here. Obviously it is not either or, like I can use the modular level assets inside of a room like this example to spice things up. So that's all fine. So yeah, those industrial levels are going to get improvements from the stuff I'm now making for level 6, 7 and 8. Talk about level 6, 7, 8, how many levels are there? Well, so the plan is to have 15 levels. So I'm almost halfway with the amount of levels. It doesn't mean that I'm halfway through the game. When it comes to the total amount of time that I've spent in the game, I'm probably close to 80 to 90% time spent. That the remaining 10% is really just to get the final levels done. Because for the rest of it, everything is pretty much in the game. I just have to make the levels and a bunch of enemies for those new levels. But enemies are pretty quick to make. Level design is honestly the hardest part. Also, level 15 is a bit of a cheat level because I already know that's just going to be a final boss arena. And designing an entire final boss, even with like multiple stages, is going to be shorter than making an entire level. So yeah, I took a bit longer on level 6 than I wanted to. That's mostly because I ended up making a lot more assets than I expected for level 6. Also, level 6 ended up being way bigger than it should have been. I didn't want to make any truly big levels anymore. Like level 2 in the demo is kind of as big as I wanted to, and level 6 is pretty much, I think it's slightly bigger, which isn't great. So level 7 and level 8 are probably going to be a lot quicker to make because they already can use or reuse a lot of assets that I've made for level 6. And they're also going to be a bit smaller because, again, level 6 is a bit too big, but I'm not going to downsize it again. So that's pretty much all I want to talk about.